Once it becomes mental, there is no completion, only continuation. There is another dimension most people ignore, Runanubandha. Sadhguru describes it as karmic bonds formed through interactions, especially physical intimacy. Every interaction leaves a trace, not just memory, but a subtle imprint. Now imagine hundreds of such imprints, layer upon layer, unprocessed, unresolved. That is not expansion, that is. They reduced her to a number, 1000 men, a number that shocks, a number that spreads, a number that people react to without thinking. But pause for a moment. What does it actually mean? Not socially, not morally, psychologically, existentially. Because no one becomes a number overnight. It builds, choice by choice, moment by moment. Stay with me till the end, because this is not just a story. This is a story about pleasure, compulsion, and what happens when a human being loses direction within themselves. Before the headlines, before the labels, she was just a person, not extreme, not broken, just searching, like everyone else, searching for validation, for connection, for a sense of significance. And the first time she felt desired, something clicked, not just in the body, but in the mind. A moment of I matter. And that moment became important. But like all external experiences, it didn't last. And when it faded, it left behind something subtle, a gap. And the mind made a silent conclusion. If this made me feel something, I need more of it. Not because she was chasing pleasure, but because she was trying to avoid emptiness. What begins as experience becomes pattern. Different people, same emotional cycle, temporary high, followed by a deeper drop, and slowly without awareness. The focus shifts from connection to relief. Relief from what is within. Sadhguru speaks about pleasure in a very direct way. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't glorify it either. He says pleasure is a small happening. Joy is a much larger possibility. Pleasure is momentary, dependent on external situations. Joy is something internal. But when a person doesn't know how to access joy, they keep chasing pleasure again and again. Here is the trap. Pleasure works once, maybe twice, but the mind remembers it, and then it demands repetition. Sadhguru explains this clearly. If you try to stretch a moment of pleasure into a long term experience, it will turn into misery. Because pleasure is not designed to last, but the human mind doesn't accept that. This is where the line is crossed. When you are no longer choosing, you are repeating. The number increases, not because of desire, but because of compulsion. Sadhguru says compulsiveness is slavery, conscious choice is freedom. From the outside, it looks like freedom. Inside, it is the exact opposite. And this applies to everything, not just sex, not just pleasure. Sadhguru says anything, if done compulsively, becomes poison, even food, even water. Think about that. Even life sustaining things become harmful without balance. So, what happens when pleasure becomes excessive? It stops giving. it starts draining. In yogic tradition, sex is not wrong, it is natural. But Sadhguru draws a line. Sex is a physical need. When you make it psychological, it becomes endless. The body has limits, the mind doesn't. Once it becomes mental, there is no completion, only continuation. There is another dimension most people ignore, Runanubandha. Sadhguru describes it as karmic bonds formed through interactions, especially physical intimacy. Every interaction leaves a trace, not just memory, but a subtle imprint. Now imagine hundreds of such imprints, layer upon layer, unprocessed, unresolved. That is not expansion, that is accumulation. Sadhguru also speaks about how modern stimulation applies this. Pornography, for example, creates intense, unrealistic impressions in the mind. These impressions stay. They shape expectations. They distort perception. So real experiences feel less. And the person starts chasing extremes. Not because reality is lacking, but because the mind has been conditioned. And then comes the moment. Silence. No distraction. No stimulation. And a question arises. Why am I still empty? After everything, after everyone, why does nothing stay? Because the problem was never outside, it was internal. And no matter how much you accumulate externally, you cannot fix what you haven't faced within. Sadhguru puts it simply, if you do not know how to be joyful by your own nature, no amount of external activity will make you so. Now step back. Look at this not as a story, but as a trend. Why do such stories get attention? Why do they get turned into content? Because they shock, because they stimulate. But ask yourself, does this move society forward? Or does it just feed curiosity without understanding? Celebrating extremes without insight does not create awareness, it creates imitation, and imitation without understanding leads to more confusion. So, this was never about 1000 men, it was about one thing, a human being trying to fill something within in the only way they knew. But here's the real question, what are they chasing? Thinking it will finally make you complete? Because until you turn inward, nothing outside will ever be enough. If this made you reflect, share this video with someone who needs clarity. And for more deep, real explorations of life and inner growth, like this video and subscribe.